we're back. Round number 2. It is Booze Day Tuesday here in Fairport. If you're not drinking, you should be. Dougie Fresh and the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Bill Moran. That's a quick intro because he starts singing quick.
That's a quick intro.
Yeah.
Wow, look at you, though. Nailed it.
Of course.
I'll have Does She Know next week for you.
Oh,
we might have to write some questions later in the podcast because I'm going out Friday to do a little taping on there. But
which place, or shouldn't we say?
No, Tally Ho.
Tally Ho.
Yeah, Tally Ho. Sean is in the house, and Sean is a guy who you may know because Sean does pretty much everything around town. He does a lot of the trivia nights. He did trivia night at Mulconry's for years. He did trivia night sometimes over at Iron Smoke.
Yep.
What else do you do? You do everything there. Do you own it? Do you secretly own it? Is Tommy just the face and you actually run that joint?
Tommy is the pretty face in charge of everything. I mean, I don't have the looks for it. I have the face for radio.
Okay.
So we let Tommy be the poster boy.
That's pretty funny. So Danny Barillo said to me, "Hey, there's a guy, Sean, and Sean is adamant. I don't know if adamant is the right word, but Sean believes that O.J. Simpson is innocent and with O.J. passing and the 30th anniversary coming up, and there's all kinds of things coming out on that. So Dan gives me Sean's number, and so yesterday I call, and it's just a generic voicemail, so I leave a message, and then I send a text, and I put the address for the studio in there, and I hear nothing. So I called Dan today, and I go, "Hey, man, is Sean kind of a flake? Or, I mean, is he locked in?" I go, he always seems to be, I haven't spoken to him a lot, but he always seems very on the ball. He's always, like, on top of stuff whenever he's running the gig. I've watched the guy. He goes, no, he's not a flake at all. I said, okay. So I texted him, and he goes, oh, all right, well, let me reach out to him. So he reaches out, and you say, yeah, what am I walking into?
Here it is.
And I said, look, you never know.
Well, I said I don't want to beat him up. I'm curious as to, I love hearing other people's, opinions and things. Yep. So he says, yeah, he goes, I said, well, maybe I have the wrong number. He goes, no. He goes, well, what number are you doing? I go, the one you sent me. I'm just clicking the text. So I read the number. He goes, yeah, that's not it. So somebody's got my name, my phone number, the address to the studio, voicemails that I'm leaving them to find out where they are, what's going on. And it's always good to double check, with people. But anyway. So O.J. Simpson, before we get in, I thought this, Doug, you may find this interesting. So they've been trying to sell, or they believe now that they can sell the white Bronco from the slow speed chase.
Yes, I
for
heard this yesterday.
$1.5 million.
3 owners.
There's 3 owners.
And it's in Tennessee.
Well, right now it's in a museum in Tennessee, in Pigeon Forge.
A museum?
Yeah.
Really?
There's some kind of a crime museum down there. And then somebody who's been there wrote me and said that it's right next to Ted Bundy's Beetle, the Volkswagen Beetle.
Okay.
In this museum. Mm-hmm. So it's a crime museum. So so years ago, it was sold. It was sold for, I think they were offered eventually $750, but back in 1996, I think it was Al had sold it for Al Cowlings for $75,000, and then canceled the sale when he found out what they were doing with it. He sold it to a company, and this company was going to lease it to another company that did celebrity graves. And what they were going to do was they were going to have a slow speed chase recreate the slow speed chase, and then take you to Nicole Brown Simpson's grave.
Oh, that's terrible.
It is, like, it made me terrible. I go, well, that's an entrepreneur. That's an entrepreneur who's going to try to, but I mean, I can't capitalize on somebody's demise no matter what. But, Sean, I went back and I've dug up some audio of different things. Why don't we start with this piece of audio? This was October 3rd, 1995.
All right, Mr. Simpson, would you please stand and face the jury? Mrs. Robertson.
Superior Court of California, County of Los Angeles, in the matter of the people of the state of California versus Orenthal James Simpson, case number BA097211. We, the jury, in the above entitled action, find the defendant Orenthal James Simpson not guilty of the crime of murder in violation of Penal Code Section 187A, a felony upon Nicole Brown Simpson, a human being, as charged in count 1 of the information.
He's the only one on the defense team that does any kind of
Superior
emotion.
Court of the State of California, County of Los
slapping
Angeles,
OJ on the
in
back. And the rest of this
matter
was really sad because you start to hear the Goldman family and his sister just sobbing in the courtroom, and it's no matter what, whether OJ did it or not, people are dead and never coming back, and so that's very, very sad.
Where I was for that. I was working at Kinney Shoes as a manager at Marketplace Mall that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a TV in there?
Radio.
Just a radio.
Yep.
Okay. All right. And I would assume like some of the restaurant bar, did they have any? Was it Ground Round around there?
It was Ground Round.
Yeah.
I think everybody was listening to that.
Yeah, we used to call it the Brown Round, and we would always.
And wasn't there a discussion that they had the verdict the night before?
They did have it in October 2nd, but they couldn't get everybody in to read it. They needed to, the court proceeding is everybody comes back to court, so they couldn't get them in. I think some people were on vacation. I think Marsha Clark was on vacation because it had been such a long trial, and they figured this was going to be weeks before they came back, and it didn't take weeks. So, Sean, why do you say what is your first of all? How old were you when all this happened?
So that would have been the murders would have been the end of my junior year of high school.
Okay.
The trial would have been the end of my senior year, beginning of my freshman year of college. So
Okay.
end of high school, beginning of college. So obviously, freshman year of college, we did nothing but pretty much watch the trial, skip plenty of classes, and went there and did that. So, my biggest take is I think that he knew and maybe was involved in some ways.
Okay.
Through a lot of stuff that's come out afterwards, I lean a lot more towards the theory that his son was involved with it, just because of,
Jason from his first marriage.
Yep.
Yeah.
With a lot of the evidence and like the lack of bruising on OJ, the photos that he took in the police station 2 days later, with the way that they say Goldman fought back and everything.
Yes.
There's a lot of stuff that doesn't add up, in my opinion. I do think OJ knew more than he ever said. I mean, if you ever read his book, that is...
Did you read?
Yeah, I did the audio version, but yes, that is ridiculous.
The If I Did It.
The If I Did It, Confessions of a Killer is what the Goldman's changed the title
to.
So, I mean, I did read that. I mean, that's a very narcissistic book take on everything. And so, again, I've always just felt that not everything added up for him to be the one that actually physically did it, but it wouldn't surprise me if he was involved or there in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
That makes a lot of sense because there's somebody who was out recently, I think an old manager of OJ's, who has really nothing to gain, said that this was a mafia-style hit, that OJ hired people but insisted on being there.
And again, that would not surprise me because
and that explains that's the one piece that I think for everybody was there's no bruising, and allegedly Goldman had gotten down into a karate stance, and the bruising on his hands and everything that that they talked about, that you would think OJ would have more. And the same thing with the Bronco. They found very little blood, if I remember right, in the Bronco and at OJ's home afterwards. Or not the Bronco. Was it a Blazer he had? There was some kind of car,
I forget what it was that he had. Obviously
Yes.
not the white Bronco that was AC's.
Right.
But his actual vehicle they impounded, there were some traces of blood, but not as much for what that scene was, if I remember how everything went down.
Do you think that, because we have a friend of the podcast who believes that somewhere there's a letter, like OJ originally had a letter that Al Cowlings read. Was it over the phone while they were in the?
Wasn't Cowlings? Wasn't it?
Who called up? Remember they called. Was it calling from the Bronco? And this is being broadcast everywhere. And they go, who are you speaking to? They goes, do you know damn well who you're speaking to, or something to that effect. It was like so. I remember laughing.
Did he just call 911? He said, "Oh, we're just trying to get OJ."
That's what it was.
OJ to his mother.
Yes,
he just wants to see his mother.
Right, But I thought there was also a letter somewhere.
There was a letter that I think Shapiro read, or maybe not Shapiro, maybe it was Kardashian read, because Loj had written a letter.
Yes.
And said, you'll know when to open this or whatever. That's when he took off with AC. And because I refreshed my memory on some of this stuff.
Oh, you did? Okay, yeah.
Well,
it's hard to remember, right? Because it's 30 years ago, and there was so much stuff that you heard so much stuff.
And there's been so much.
So what was real, what wasn't?
There's been so much afterwards with, the miniseries that was on, what was it, FX?
Yeah, I didn't watch that.
It was interesting. And like so many other things. It just always
they said that the tabloid newspapers like the Inquirer and Star and other ones were the big factor in getting evidence. They were going after stuff because they wanted to find out the links.
I'll tell you,
write about it.
I always thought the Inquirer, and I know there were things like, a woman gives birth to alien baby or whatever.
Oh, I like that one.
But they also seemed to be, they were the ones that sunk Gary Hart's Democratic nomination, basically, to be president of the United States, because they had busted him in the affair. Wasn't it Gary? I think it was Gary Hart. And then there was, who was the guy from South Carolina whose wife had cancer, and they uncovered his affair. And it was all the Inquirer. They did they did almost better investigative, albeit tabloid stuff.
That's
but
been said.
Yeah, better
the
investigative journalism than a lot of the others.
Detectives, yeah. They were digging deep.
They were the TMZ.
Yes, they were.
The TMZ of the day.
Yeah.
And nowadays, TMZ is one of the go-to places for some of that celebrity scandal news, but you trust them all the time.
Yeah. Well, it's right there. TMZ did a story on the bar on this strip here.
Yeah.
You remember that?
Yep.
It's crazy. All right. Well, I think your theory then makes a little more sense. It's not so far out like I don't think he ever did it at all.
Yeah. I'm not one of those people who's like, he had nothing to do with it, didn't know anything about it. But also, I just feel that he was, granted, he did have the book, which was one way of kind of him speaking out about stuff, but he was such an attention-hungry person.
Yes.
That I don't think he could have kept his mouth shut for 30 years either.
Well, that's the weird part, is I think that too with a lot of people. I often feel like human beings can't keep a secret, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Because I feel like
depending on the secret.
Well, true. How bad it is, but there are some things that eventually you tell
they had
one
kids
person.
Together.
Yeah. He had two kids together, a son and a daughter. So I thought part of his thing was like he wanted to be there for the kids, knowing that Nicole was gone, but somehow, dropping the glove.
Al Collings knows his best friend.
Well,
I would guarantee that.
I think somebody has to know something. They had to ask OJ, what the hell is going on? All of a sudden, all the secrecy
if it is a mafia hit, they say, if you ever bring our name, we've already shown you what we're going to do. We're going to kill you and all your family. So don't ever say anything.
Right. Now, this was, did you see, because O.J. Simpson, The Lost Confession, was a special on Fox. They never aired it, but they did the interviews. This was in 2006. So we're talking almost a little more than a decade after the murders. And it was to coincide with the release of the book, Sean, that you had read.
Yeah.
If I Did It. And I guess I remember hearing some stuff about this, but I don't think it ever aired because I think there was such backlash.
And I think you're right there because I remember hearing about it. I don't know that I've ever seen it or heard it.
So I found some audio, and if this isn't a confession, just listen to this.
I know the facts better than anyone. First of all, this is very difficult for me to do this. It was very difficult for me because it's hypothetical.
A wool cap and gloves.
In the hypothetical, I put on a cap and gloves. I don't think any two people could be murdered the way they were without everybody being covered in blood. I just remember Nicole fell and hurt herself. And this guy kind of got into a karate thing. And I said, well, you think you can kick my ass? And I remember I grabbed a knife. I do remember that portion, taking a knife from Charlie. And to be honest, after that, I don't remember. Except I'm standing there and there's all kind of stuff around and
what kind of stuff?
Blood and stuff around. I hate to say this, but this is hypothetical. I'm sorry. I know we got to back up again.
You write about removing a glove before taking the knife from Charlie.
I had no conscious memory of doing that, but obviously I must have because they found the glove there.
In the book, you describe taking off your shoes, your pants, and your shirt and dropping it in a bundle. Do you remember that?
Yes.
This is OJ talking about it.
Yeah, that was the thing that I don't think that aired on Fox.
No, that's essentially what's written in the book. Like, the one chapter, where he's like, hypothetically speaking, if I did it, this is how. And he went through pretty much everything we heard.
But when he's speaking there, it goes from hypothetical to I was there. Who's Charlie?
Well, that's the thing that I've always found interesting in the book is who was this Charlie person? Because they never really say who it is, at least as far as I know, either.
Okay.
Which, again, leads me to believe that, I think he was involved in some way. I think he knew.
Yeah. Well, then it almost gives credence to the manager who said OJ had this set up and insisted on being there. So I'm wondering if Charlie's the hitman. Charlie does all this stuff. And then, I see that guy get down in a karate stance. You think you're going to kick my ass. I mean, the way he's talking, I mean,
yeah.
I just that freaks you out, does it not? You get chills listening to this. And to go from the most beloved, not the most beloved, but a very beloved, I'll say, character. You were a gridiron star, right? On lowly teams, the Bills, and then the 49ers. Who at the time, the 49ers at that time weren't winning.
I know, I'm joking.
But I'll be honest with you. I was only coming kind of conscious of football and sports and all that stuff when OJ played for the 49ers. I had no idea he played for the Bills. Right. And then, I loved the Naked Gun movies, and you saw
Towering Inferno.
Towering Inferno, which was an awful movie, but I mean a great movie, but an awful movie. I mean, it's just.
I was just naming a movie he was in.
No, I know, but it's an awful movie. Wasn't it? It was people dying and
right.
It was 1972 or something.
Something like that.
Yeah. But so he goes on to be an actor, and then he's the sportscaster, and he's up in Buffalo often on the field doing his
every
reports.
week.
Yeah, handsome guy, the Hertz commercials, and then this. You never saw this. We never saw that side of him. But the domestic violence stuff, it all seems to add up. But that thing, I mean,
How many calls did they get before they actually sent somebody? I just read this the other day, 8 calls from Nicole Brown. That things were going on, and then they finally sent somebody to the house.
I thought over the years there different calls. I don't remember.
It's a lot. Not.
I think there were a few. I think there were a few that they did show up, and it was like, "Hey, OJ, man,
yeah, settle down, relax."
Yeah, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's like, which is I don't mean to. I laugh out of awkwardness and uncomfortableness because I but when you're famous, you get away with stuff.
Yeah, you do.
Unfortunately. I just got to hear this again. This freaks me out.
I know the facts better than anyone. First of all, this is very difficult for me to do this. It was very difficult for me because it's hypothetical.
All right, so it's hypothetical. This is what he's saying. It's hypothetical. But when he continues to talk, it sounds very first person.
Because it's hypothetical.
A wool cap and gloves.
In the hypothetical, I put on a cap and gloves. I don't think any two people could be murdered the way they were without everybody being covered in blood.
O.J. Simpson had who's behind him? Who's the slow white Bronco? Peyton Manning?
Yeah, Peyton Manning.
I just remember Nicole fell and hurt herself.
See, that. I don't remember that coming out that Nicole fell and hurt herself.
Right.
I just knew that Nicole practically had her head chopped off.
And so I guess one of the things that we'll rewind for a second that leads me a little more towards the Jason stuff that I believe in. So there were all the domestic violence calls that, were documented here and there. None of them were ever with a weapon. I mean, he was physical. He was
none were with a weapon. Right.
Where you had his son just arrested a few days before that for attacking his manager with a knife.
Oh, I didn't know that.
So you had his son, with a lot of violent history with knives, who also had, I guess, some type of either ROTC, Army, Navy training or whatever. He was about 24 at the time. So again, with a lot of the physicality of it, has always led me back towards it being more Jason, who also had I guess, documented mental illness issues.
And didn't like Nicole.
It didn't because, she was the woman that came in after OJ left his mom. Because he was about, I think, 13 or so when OJ met Nicole. Or don't hold me on the exact dates. But something like that. And it always, again, that's where as more and more evidence came out. I know they have the one private investigator who's claimed he bought like a storage locker that Jason owned that had journals in it and had a knife that he thought could be connected, and who knows how much to believe of any of that stuff. Because a lot of it's people go for publicity, but just that always added more and more. It's like, yeah, OJ was definitely not a nice person and had some horrible sides to him.
But wouldn't you be a conspirator to the murder?
I think an accessory to murder.
Accessory. I don't know what the laws are.
I don't know what technically the crime would be. But I mean, I definitely do not think he was innocent of being not involved in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I just don't think that he physically.
I mean, and then to take the hit that it, knowing it's your kid. So I guess you didn't stop it.
One of the other interesting facts that I was looking at stuff the other day and it brought it back. OJ hired a lawyer for his kid before he hired lawyers for himself. So the day that he found out, he hired a lawyer for Jason before he even had his whole dream team of people assembled and before he was charged with anything. So he was already kind of expecting Jason to get talked to and interrogated in some way, shape, or form.
So they very possibly could have said, and I've heard this theory too, is like OJ just go to trial. They're not going to be able to pin it on you, and we'll be able to deflect a whole bunch off of you, get you not guilty, and then your son will. I guess it was proved, well, not proven, but that his son had done it after many years. There was more evidence linking his son than actually OJ.
Okay. It's sort of, I don't even like saying this, but it sort of makes a little more sense in the stuff, except for the things that we're hearing here. Yeah. But he may have been there. Is there a possibility that he knew that Jason was going to do this, or did he want Jason to do this?
One of the accounts that I read, again, this is all speculation on stuff, was that, I guess that the Nicole was supposed to be out with the kids at some restaurant that Jason worked at. She didn't go there. He was mad. He went over. Then apparently this account goes, Jason committed the crimes, then called his dad, who showed up and was like pretty much, okay, get out of here, get rid of this stuff.
Yeah.
And then the cover up or whatever happened.
And this guy kind of got into a karate thing. I said, well, you think you can kick my ass? And
Well, this guy, right, so he doesn't know his name. But by that point in 2006, he clearly should have known his name. But I'm wondering if he was... The karate stance, where did that come out? I had heard that before. Was this the only account? Was it the book that he says karate stance?
Well, I know there's like all the talk about Goldman being a black belt in karate.
Oh, there was. How could he?
He should have been able to defend himself.
Yeah.
Somewhat. Then again, it goes back to the lack of bruising on OJ. Like he thinks there's got his black belt in karate.
He's going to do something.
Especially, how old was OJ at that point? He had been in his 50s.
42.
Late 40s?
Yeah, I thought he was in his early 40s.
I remember I grabbed a knife. I do remember that portion, taking a knife from Charlie. And to be honest, after that, I don't remember.
Taking a knife from Charlie.
I don't know who Charlie is.
All kind of stuff around and
What kind of stuff?
blood.
So, if you think about this, let's go with the theory that he didn't do it. His son did it. His son calls him in a panic, says, I did it. He goes over to see this. And then for the rest of your life, you're this. Look, do you have kids?
Yep.
Okay. You love your kids. I have kids. I would do anything for my kids. I don't know if I would be willing
That is something that's hard to live with.
Yeah. It'd be hard to know that they did this, right? And not, but at the same time, I wouldn't want them somewhere else. I'd want them somewhere where I could try to keep an eye on them, or maybe make them live with me, something, right? That I could keep an eye. But I wouldn't want them in a prison. But it would be terrible to know that they were capable of this. This was brutal. And yet,
if OJ beat his wife up 8 times, at least for calls, and probably more domestic abuse.
yeah.
How bad is it to go from that to, okay, my son ended up killing her? You know, you're already beating up a woman many times.
Yes. Yeah. No, I don't know. I have no idea. But what I'm saying is, let's just go on the simple fact that you're going to cover for your son for the rest of your life. You've become a pariah, a polarizing figure in America. To me, I found him the most interesting because you went from, I mean, the only other one I can think of is Cosby. You go from America's dad to whatever, the pariah you are, the rapist, basically.
I could also see him being so narcissistic and self-centered to think that he's not going to get all this backlash, that after it's proven that, he didn't do it, that all of a sudden America's going to come back and love OJ because I'm OJ. And so, I mean, the guy was not all there mentally on many levels.
No, he was right. But then, I mean, even living in Florida, doing cocaine, going around, partying with young chicks, he just had a life after that. And then, the 9 years in prison for a crime that didn't, just on the surface, didn't deserve 9 years. This was payback in some way. But you do all that, and really, it was your kid that did it, potentially. And it seems you make a good case in that theory. Well, I didn't know there was more evidence that came out maybe pointing that direction. That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of other stuff that came out. Jason apparently had the same hat that was found there, and hairs. And there was a whole bunch of different stuff that had come out in the one documentary that was aired, I don't know what, maybe 10 years ago or so.
Yeah. You didn't walk into any kind of lines. And I actually think you make sense in the more and more. It's just such a weird thing, right? Because you would think at some point, something to that level would eat at you, that you would, I don't know, something weird would happen or come out. Or someone would say something.
The other thing is, it's like, you would think by now someone would have caved to money.
That's what I mean. Something.
So either the circle is very small of people that know, or they're
That's
gone.
what I think.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is it's an interesting thing for sure. Sean, who brings up some good points. Sean, who works at Iron Smoke, is later tonight, because we're taping this on Tuesday, the 16th. Is this the monthly smartphone trivia that you do?
Tonight is my monthly smartphone
at
trivia.
Iron Smoke Distillery.
Yep, and so it's music trivia night, and then actually tonight I do a live band music round. So it's like a band playing music clips.
Really?
Which is funny when you have like two white overweight guys and they're playing, like Lizzo or something. People are trying to guess, the name of the song or there. So that's always something that's a little fun.
That is fun. And then tomorrow night is live band karaoke. Over there. Are you there tomorrow night as well?
I'm not. I'm over at Damien's joint tomorrow.
Okay.
Every Wednesday over there at Mall Connery's.
All right.
So,
and then
what do you do there on Wednesdays?
Trivia every Wednesday.
Yeah, every Wednesday.
Is that the New York trivia? Western New York trivia?
Speed quiz. Figure Lakes Entertainment. Or Figure Lakes Trivia, yeah.
Okay.
And then Steve Bartolotta's All-Star Jam will be back on Thursday the 18th at Iron Smoke Distillery. Get over there. Have some of their fine spirits. Friday the 19th, Chris and Corey for the Acoustic Sunset Sessions. Those begin at 5. You do? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Audible is back playing the main stage on Friday the 19th, excuse me.
They're a fun one. I just want to thank you guys for having me and giving me a chance to chat with you today, too. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think it's great. And it's just such a weird thing to me. That guy, I always thought he did it or had some knowledge of something. And I don't know how you love somebody and then could have their head cut off and not at some point just eat at you. We had a 98-year-old guy in here because the Fairport Police do a podcast that we produce. And this guy talked about being in World War II and killing people. And he remembers the first person he shot, a German soldier over in I don't know where exactly, but I think in Germany. And he said that I sometimes think, I'm sitting in my easy chair now, and the memories flood back, and I think, how could I have done that? And I thought the same thing with OJ. Was there ever a thing. How could they? And it just has to be, unless you're so good. And the only thing I could think of is to be a great athlete, really to be great at anything, you got to have a short memory, because everybody has what we'll call a failure in some way, a bad game, a bad day, a bad whatever. But you got to have a short memory.
Just put it behind you.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah. Right? Put it a little behind you. Can you do that with something like this? But this was the mother of your children. You have kids who you love, I would assume, that no longer have a mother on the planet, and somehow you're guilty in society. You are found guilty and liable in the civil court, all this shit. And I go, at some point you have to think in your mind, I don't know, like this 98-year-old guy, how could I have done that? Or how could my son have been able to do this, or whatever?
Kept himself busy with cocaine and hookers.
Yes, he did.
And women
which
dancing.
would be.
You ever see that video, dancing in a club? Thank you, Jesus. I love you, Jesus.
No.
Surrounded by 5 or 6 women.
No, I don't.
You haven't?
No.
Okay.
I'll look for that. But
I'm looking it up right now.
No, but what I'm saying is that's a good, I'm sure, and these are all escapes, right? Get high, forget. Get drunk, forget.
You also look at what we've learned about pro football players over the last, 10 years with CTE and all that stuff that, who knows what type of trauma he suffered back in the day. And again, that's not excusing anything.
No, it's not. It's not. And I don't know. But that's interesting. All right, we will take a moment. Feel free to stick around if you want to. Otherwise, we will talk about this Omaha teacher. I don't know if you know about this. Mutual of Omaha. We'll get to that next.
Okay.